good to have you here. I just wanted to start talking about Pink Elephant because obviously I assume people know Pink Elephant somehow, but I don't know if they recall where they first heard of it and when that was with regards to all of the ITIL V2 rush that once happened where everybody got to know Pink Elephant. And
that's how we started basically in the ITIL education, and brought ITIL in from the UK into Europe and expanded it globally from there. So if you know ITIL, there's a good chance you know about us, or at least have read some of our books or white papers.
Exactly. That was my assumption as well, that people will recall that they have seen collaterals from Pink Elephant somewhere in their career when spending time around ITIL. Today, we invited you for talking about the best practice around secure discovery, but then also the next level of that, the dependency mapping. I'd say I'd give you stage and let you talk about it because you probably know a little more about it than I do, and so I'd rather leave stage to you.
No problem. I'll share my screen. And just 1 second. There we go.
Here we are.
Good. So we're talking about the best practice with secure discovery and dependency mapping, and especially the part around building a structured, secure CMDB. So let's just get started. For people that don't know me, and that's probably everybody, my name is Misha Macinski. I work at Pink Elephant for about 10 years now. My specialty has always been processes. I've mainly worked in project management around processes for the first 7 or so years, and the last couple of years I've been specializing around operations and IT service management, the service management as a whole. So within Pink Elephant, I'm responsible for anything that has to do with ITSM technology. So whether that's secure discovery and dependency mapping, service performance mapping, whether that is a service management solution, you name it, and I'm responsible for it at Pink Elephant. And when I say at Pink Elephant, I mean at Pink Elephant EMEA in the European region, including the UK nowadays. Maybe best thing, we already kind of started about it, but the best thing I think is to start introducing ourselves. So pink, hence the colors on the screen, as you can see, an elephant, because, well, pink and an elephant, just things you remember, right? Don't think about the pink elephant. Well, there's a fair chance people know us, right? We've educated or consulted or helped about 250,000 IT professionals globally. We're the #1 world supplier of ITIL and Prince2 in the world, and we organize the largest gathering of ITSM and ITIL professionals in the industry in our annual conference in the US with over 3,000 visitors. So. And a special note is that 80 out of the 100 Fortune 100 companies are loyal customers of Pink Elephant. So that's a noteworthy fact. Now, why are we so big? Well, we're maybe not very big, but we are a global organization. So we have entities over various continents. So we have a North America Pink Elephant, we have a South America Pink Elephant, Asia Pacific Pink Elephant, and a EMEA Pink Elephant. And I'm representing the UK and the European office, and we work very closely with our South African office to cover the entire EMEA region. Our portfolio is quite extensive, so that's where we get our knowledge and when we try to apply our knowledge. So obviously we do consulting and service management, but also around IT security and governance and project management, as well as obviously all the education in that area. So whether that is something around security, business simulations, or something like our new online learning solutions platform called the Pink Portal, where you can get any training around service management or project management or other methodologies. That's our core business. Well, next to that, we have our outsourcing business where we do full outsourcing, managed service desk, etc. We're responsible for a lot of resourcing, whether that is on a contracting basis or on a recruitment basis. And obviously, then that's my specialty, all the technology, which includes service management, and as I mentioned, discovery and dependency mapping, but also all kinds of other smart things around, especially the service management area. Now, you might ask, why would people choose Pink? What's Pink? Why is it so special? Well, we are the trusted global leaders and authorities in IT service management, which means basically we work with large companies, but we work together also with all the large institutes that create all those best practices. We write and take part in writing those best practices. Obviously, we teach them. We talk to all the governing bodies, etc., etc. So we really build a strong foundation for knowledge, and also, making sure that the right things are brought to market. The last few years, we've been dedicated to building a one-stop ITSM shop. So anything around service management, whether you want a tool or consultancy or everything together, you're transforming your organization, we're the address to stop at. And we have over 40 years experience in service management. You mentioned ITIL V2. That's kind of where it started for us in the early 1990s, rolling it out globally. And over 10 years experience in the tooling market. So the last bullet I already mentioned. So just a quick glance at what our customers are. And again, it's just a small pick. But a couple of customers we're very proud of in the UK, right? And where we have a large office and a large office in the Netherlands, but also, it ventures out all the way into Bulgaria, France, and Switzerland, all the way down to South Africa and the larger Africa region. Now, why we are here today is to talk about best practice, obviously, and especially best practices around, the CMDB, secure discovery and dependency mapping. And to kind of know what we're talking about, we need to talk about a little bit of theory first. I won't bore you with this, but we need to understand what we are discovering, what we are trying to get a clear view of, right? And that is a CI, a configuration item. And a configuration item is any component that needs to be managed in order to deliver an IT service, right? So that can be hardware, that can be software, and that can be information, right? Or elements of that. And all the way up together, that builds up a IT service chain, as we call it, right? So all those components in that IT service. And we want to manage the life cycle in that CI, right? Because it's important for us. It has value. It's a crucial link in that chain. So we need to manage that. Now, in context, we've got next to just that CMDB and that CI, we've got a service asset and configuration management, and that is a method to ensure that CIs are identified. There's a baseline on those CIs; those are maintained, and changes to them are controlled. And that's where the secure discovery and dependency mapping comes in. So when we talk about service asset configuration management, or SECM in short, what does it do? Well, it ensures that the assets required to deliver services are properly controlled, right? So that's a very important aspect of that. But it also ensures that all the information we have around those CIs is reliable and available to those who need it at the time they need it. And finally, it includes information on how those configuration items are configured and what the relationships are between them. And that's where the dependency mapping comes in. So now take an example, which is an email service, right? An email is basically the foundational core of just about every company. And that email service is built up around main services. In this case, those might be servers. And those servers might go through routers. And those routers might end up at a department or a telephone or someone in the field. And it could end up servicing users. Now, what happens if one of those CIs fails? We need to know, right, which CI is that? What's its relationship? Why has it failed? We need to monitor that. Is it because of a change that we can no longer see it? Is it, et cetera, et cetera? And what happens when a single CI fails? Well, we've got to break in the entire chain of services. So no longer is that data flowing through the system. No longer can that workforce access their email. No longer can the users access that email. Maybe even whole departments are no longer able to work. So this is the importance of SECM, right? It's not a hobby to keep track of all CIs in the system. It's really crucial to understand what your service is built out of and what you're depending on. What are you the crucial parts in your system, how they're linked together, and what is the performance, what are the bottlenecks, what's failing, etc., etc. All right. Now, the unfortunate truth, and a very smart person once told me, a perfect CMDB is a bit like a unicorn. Everybody knows what a unicorn looks like, but nobody has ever seen one. Now, that is a bit exaggerated, but having said that, even the most experienced service management consultants in the world will only see the perfect CMD once or twice in their life. Right? So that's how rare it is. Yet we always try to grasp it. We always try to achieve it. So that's where a couple of the best practices come in. And that is starting off on the right foot. Now, the thing is with building a CMDB, getting that information together is you need to be selective, right? The fact that you have information doesn't mean you need to capture all of it. Don't try to capture the world, but find value. Try to identify those CIs or those elements in your service change that really matter. Do try to find all those bits of information on those CIs would really matter. The fact that you know all these extra little bits of information, if they don't have value, don't include them. It's going to take time and effort, and I'll get back to that later, to get it into the system and maintain it. The second bit is roll out one CI type at a time, right? Try to build it up. It's a huge task. Start small, pick one CI, try to get as much together around that CI as possible, and try to define what you need, and then start building out that CI. And as you are building out, you're starting to learn. You can come back on your steps, right, and start to learn. So when you pick up that next CI, you've got a better grasp of what you're doing, what you need, what you can get, what you can't get. So don't try to do it all at once. Try and take an iterative approach, a more agile approach on getting that value and increasing quality step by step. Then another very important point is being realistic. Can you actually achieve what your goals are? Can you, the CMDB, especially when looked upon by service management nerds like me, is a beautiful thing, and you'd like to make it as perfect and as big and as great as possible. But you need to really ask yourself, can you get everything together? What is a realistic goal? Set some smart goals, right? Don't go aiming for the moon. Start building it up and be realistic in the goals you set. And finally, be pragmatic. You should really ask yourself, should you get all this information together? What do you need? Should you be doing what you're doing? And again, it falls back to being realistic and selective. As I mentioned, as you get enthusiastic about a subject, you might want to pull in way too many things. The question is, should you? Again, look at that value. And finally, is just get started. You need to get started at some point, and that might not be a perfect point, but start building it up from there. Get that iterative approach going, get that agile approach going, and just get started somewhere, because if you keep looking at paper theory, you're not going to get anywhere. All right. Now, an important thing to know is the amount of effort that goes into building a CMDB, and that's a significant amount, right? And we've tried to build kind of a business case, or more a representation of how much time that is. And this is just something to keep in the back of your mind, because a CMDB takes significant effort to build, let alone maintain. So when we look at the cost of discovery, getting all that information together from all those different sources, and that might be automated sources like SACM, but there might also be Excel sheets and, finance systems, etc., etc. Just think of an imaginary organization, right? And this is not a very large organization. We're looking at 100 servers, 150 physical servers, 100 services, 300 virtual servers, server-based software, network equipment, desktop laptops of 4,000, iPads, iPhones, desktop software and printers, It's a reasonable sized organization, but it's not very large, right? It's a very common size organization. Together, we have almost 8,000 CIs, right? Now, keep in mind that if you want to start tracking information on things that are of value, we already have 8,000 CIs that you might want to keep information on. So now we need to think about what would be the implementation workload. Each service needs about 6 technicians to map the service to the required level of detail, right? You define a level of detail, you need to gather that information, you need to get your technicians together. So we've got 79 services with 6 people, with 3 hours for each service, which is 178 man days to populate, or roughly 3/4 of a year. And now that's just getting everything in, right? At the moment you put it on paper, which is not a automatically maintained piece of, database, right? Let's say an Excel register or an Access database, which isn't automatically updated. The moment you put it in there, it's basically out of date, because the moment someone executes a change or hands in their iPad or gets a new iPhone, that data that you have is outdated. So we need to keep that maintained. So what does that mean? Well, each device has approximately 35 attributes on it. That means that we have almost 300,000 items of connected data, right? In addition, there were more than 10,000 relationships between those items to maintain. Each week we've gotten about 110 changes, and each change affected on average 3 CIs. That means each month 1,320 CIs were being altered. That's almost 20% of the database, right? And this is a real life case of an organization that said we want to register all this. Well, that means that you need to do a lot of work every month, right? This is a lot of work. So you need a dedicated manpower, first to build that CMDB, you need to design it, build it, and then maintain it. And that is a lot of work. So, what should you do? Well, tame that unicorn. That's the most important thing. Think about it in a pragmatic sense, in a pragmatic way, and get it automated. The more you automate, the less you have to do manually. So get as much automation done as possible. Everything you need to put into a CMDB and into that mapping and into that service chain that you can't automate should feel like pulling out a toenail. That's how much effort it should be taking. Now, one of the things when you are automating is that you can discover every network CI and synchronize only those that you need, right? We can see the entire network, but what do we really need? Synchronize those elements. That's the important bit. Be realistic. And get all that CI data together automatically, right? And just make sure that you're looking at that data that's relevant. It's nice that you have all the additional data, come and audit or whatever, but get that CI data that's relevant for you and make that visible to the relevant individuals at the right time. Now, the thing we talked about is maintenance, and maintenance takes upon a much larger workload than just the implementation itself, right? So take that into account. We just looked at the example, we had nearly 20% of the CMDB change per month. That means that of the initial project, 1/5 is being changed every month, right? So we are doing the same project every 10 months, the same amount of effort. So we need to automatically and continuously keep the CMDB up to date. Again, automate that. Discover automatically. Discover those relationships automatically. So, and the important thing is that we need to understand those relationships between each CI. Why do we need to understand it? Because that's really valuable information we need to use when doing change management. That's really valuable information we need to do when doing a change evaluation. We've done a change, it has gone wrong. What has happened? Has someone keyed in the wrong information? Did we get the wrong information? Even having a look at your CMDB from scratch, building up all those relationships automatically, you might even discover changes that have been executed in the past wrong. You might have opened up part of your infrastructure by doing it that way. Now, and the last bit is mapping out all those critical business services, right? So we need to get a good overview of what those critical business services looks like, right? We've got sometimes very complex structures that build up to a critical business service out into the outside world. You want to make sure that, first of all, it's all going through the right path. You want to know what are your bottlenecks. If you are experiencing performance issues, where are those performance issues? Those are all the important things. Now, once we've got all that in, we need to think about keeping those elements under control. And finally, and that's a very important thing, when we're talking about the secure part, I've already mentioned a couple of things. You want to see what is in your network and how it's exiting your infrastructure. But also, when you're doing automation, make sure you're continuously discovering. Make sure you're continuously discovering business service, so you know that all your changes have gone as expected, that no unapproved changes have occurred, that you've got a solid baseline that you can monitor. But also anything that pops up new in your environment, you want to know about, right? Is someone plugging in a device into your network? Is someone plugging in a device into your server infrastructure, etc., etc.? So I've gone through it rather quickly, but these are a couple of use cases that we've been working on. One of the other use cases I want to stop by is, and again, it's all about workload and not making things too big and starting at some point. Working on a financial institute at some point, the customer wanted to build out a very large mapping of all services offered out to customers, like an enterprise architecture-like model. What are we offering out to our consumers? And then drill that down all the way into IT services, into server level, CI level, even up to maybe disk level, right? Now that failed, that project. And that failed for a couple of reasons. One, it requires a lot of effort from your organization to start mapping which IT services are supporting which business services are supporting which customer processes. And that's a very complicated task. So start picking out those critical services and build it up from there. The other thing is, there was a large group of service management enthusiasts, if I might call them so. So, we do have the tendency to make things a bit too big. So think about, scaling that down. Start building it from the ground up and from the bottom down, right? You can work two ways. It's not a problem, as long as you've got your designs coming together at some point. Third thing is, there was no automation in place. There was no resource capacity in place, right? Two things. So not only did we not have the capability to automate that input, also did we not have the capability to do that manually. We had good ideas. There were good ideas on table. We weren't able to put that into a prototype of some sort, build up a small database, show what it has, show what it can do, show what the value it has, and build up a business case that way to invest in it more. Because this is it might not be the most interesting subject, but it brings a lot of value into your ITIL processes. It brings a lot of value in all your operations processes. If you know how elements in the network work together, if you know which business services are critical and supported by which elements, and you've got an incident at some point, you can start thinking about automatically flagging and highlighting which incidents are really important, right? Even a priority 4 incident on a critical business process might be very important. So to conclude, I think the best thing to say is, be pragmatic about your approach and automate as much as possible, because else it's very, very difficult to get started or even get finished. Any questions and answers? I really can't see my screen, so
you can't see
hoping on some.
I can.
I have my presentation in front of me, so.
Yeah, very good. Just cool. Thank you very much for that presentation, and thank you very much for elaborating on how to use. There is a question that somebody posted, and it's like, what tools would you recommend for automation? I have an idea for Matrix42, but which do you have?
Well, Yeah, well, we're very enthusiastic about the Firescope product of Matrix, and it helps a lot, and especially the approach Matrix has towards this is great. It's very easy to build up a use case, right? Build up get Firescope the Firescope team involved, and just spend 5 days on mapping out one critical business service, and it immediately brings value, but it also brings visibility to that value.
Mm.
Right? Because now your CIO or your CEO can see what we're talking about. It has value because you can see, all right, this is my business service, these are the IT services, and this is all the underlying things that we need to worry about or think about or manage. So yeah, obviously it's an easy pick there.
All right, and to which extent would you say, from starting the organizational question around what are we about to achieve till you finalize that project, to what extent would you say Firescope contributed to achieving that goal?
Yeah,
Can
but
you
well,
estimate?
as I mentioned, it starts just at the value phase, right? You want to prove its value of building a CMDB, because that's not always, actually it's nearly never obvious that getting a solid CMDB together brings value. But as soon as you start, as I mentioned, building a business case and showing the value of that CMDB to board level or IT directors, then that switch is turned on. All right, we can monitor it, we can see performance, we can influence how we are serving our customers, and then building it up from there, right? Because implementing Firescope is it's not the hardest thing, right? It's really quick. There's a really professional team. We do it as well, and just building up that seemed to be really quickly, but also more importantly, getting that network topology in place, right? And this is,
Mm.
bear in mind, if you have to do this manually, this takes months, if not years, to build, right? I've seen projects run for years to get everything in, and now we can automate it and have it running in a couple of days. I mean, that brings value so quickly. And yeah, it's and that value doesn't go only towards customer process. It also goes to IT operations, who now no longer have to search for incidents or what happened or what broke, or that value is just fantastic. And I mean, it's very hard to express, but it's seeing how that works is just delightful.